Welcome back to Storytime. In today's episode, we're going to be continuing our reading with the prompt, while on a camping trip with your friends, you find the cabin you've been renting is being visited by something strange, eerie, and supernatural. Today's story comes from user Star Night. The wind rattled the shutters of the cabin, the storm outside pelting the little shelter with rain. It had been raining for nearly 2 days now, and Claire was sick of it. So much for spring break. Claire had wanted to go to Miami or Daytona anyway. Florida springs were beautiful, but they were crazy overcrowded and with the wrong kind of tourists. Spring break was meant to be centered around hot guys on hot beaches, while she, Claire Hopper, looked hot in her bikini. Not that she was likely to get that here, though. All the guys at the springs were rednecks with beer bellies and a love for trucks. There were supposed to be margaritas and coconuts, not Pabst Blue Ribbon in a styrofoam cooler. Claire wasn't sure how she had allowed Janae to talk her into coming to this hick fest. It had been nothing but country music or Spanish music on boomboxes from her fellow campers day and night, and she was about to scream. It wouldn't have been so bad, she reflected sourly, if she was allowed to actually go to the spring, but because of the rain, it was closed. And on the occasions when the rain let up, the humidity, even under the cover of the trees, was hellacious. Claire blew out a sigh and idly scrolled through her Instagram feed. This whole trip had been a bust as far as she was concerned, and she couldn't wait to get back to LSU. Janae opened the door to the cabin and sidled in, laden with bags and drinks. "There's still some left in the car," Janae gasped, unloading herself on the table. "Can you give me a hand here?" "Get Becca to do it," Claire said in a bored voice. "I'm busy." As she said this, she returned to being profoundly unbusy. Becca, Janae's roommate, was a rosy-cheeked plus-size girl with curly brown hair and a dimpled smile. Claire didn't like her much. She thought she was annoying. Besides, to the former prom queen, Becca's pudgy body was seen as a lack of effort on the bigger girl's part. Claire would never let herself go like that. "Yo, Beck! I'm back from the store. Come help me unload," Janae hollered, rolling her eyes. She was regretting bringing Claire on this trip. Claire was one of Janae's closest sorority friends, and Janae liked her sassy attitude and vicious tongue, but Claire was a vintage best sampled in small doses. Long-term exposure was toxic. For herself, Janae was a Puerto Rican/Colombian descent girl with a fiery temper and curves for days. She loved coming to the springs and was having a great time, aside from the rain and Claire's bad attitude. She had made friends with some Hispanic guys in the next cabin and arranged for them to come over for a party tonight. She had been making eyes at an attractive diver named Marco in particular, and he seemed pretty into it too. Janae waited for a moment, but there was no response from Becca's room. Blowing out a sigh, Janae knocked on the door, and getting no response, she stuck her head in only to withdraw it again a moment later. "Where's Becca?" Janae asked, coming over to Claire. "How'd I know?" Claire responded testily. "I'm not her mom." "Did she say she was going out?" Janae asked, trying to keep the irritation out of her voice. Claire thought about it for all of a second before shrugging. "I don't know. I think so." Janae scowled at her friend. Claire was really the limit sometimes. "Any idea where?" Janae asked exasperatedly. "She's probably just getting a snack or something," Claire said dismissively. "She'll be back." Janae shook her head and went to bring in the extra groceries. There was no point bringing it up to Claire, but Janae was worried about her roommate. She didn't have an amazing sense of direction, and the campsites all kind of looked the same. Still, she couldn't have gone far, not on foot. It was probably okay. Janae felt far less certain in her conviction that it was fine as minutes began to stretch into hours, and there was still no sign of Becca. Maybe Becca had gone to the spring. Unlikely, given the rain. Maybe she had found someone to hang out with. She was probably fine. Janae liked Becca. Her roommate was a very fun-loving and charismatic woman, and had given Janae so much life. Becca was, as Janae herself introduced her frequently, her sister from another mister. And the idea she might be in trouble made Janae uneasy. She picked up her phone and called Becca's number. The familiar sound of "I'm a bitch, I'm a lover" that Becca used for her ringtone rang out from Becca's room. Shit. She hadn't brought her phone with her then. Janae fidgeted and looked out the window at the palm forest outside. If Becca wasn't back by 5 p.m., Janae resolved to go look for her. But 5 o'clock came and went, and there was no sign of Becca. Janae got her keys and drove down to the bathhouse where the vending machines were. If Claire was right, this would be the most likely place for her to be, but there were no signs of her there. Janae checked the spring. It was empty. She checked the ranger station. They hadn't seen anybody matching Becca's description leave. Where the hell was she? As Janae drove back to the cabin, she became vaguely aware that there was a shocking lack of people around. She hadn't really noticed before, chalking it up to the rain, but now she was thinking about it. Rain wasn't enough to stop some people. The spring always had people in it, rain or no rain. For many of the tourists, this was the only vacation they would get this year. They weren't going to let a little thing like torrential rain stop them. But there had been nobody there. Weird. Back at the campsite, Janae went over to the cabin next door to ask Marco if they had seen Becca. The Hispanic music playing on the boombox was playing out the windows and made it hard for her to hear if anyone was inside. She banged on the door and called, but there was no answer. Circling around the cabin, Janae tried, unsuccessfully, to see through the windows, but she was too short. After a while, she gave up and trudged back through the woods to her own cabin. "You back? You back?" Janae called loudly. No response. The cabin was completely silent. Going into the living room/kitchen, Janae was shocked to see that Claire wasn't there either. For Becca to go off on her own was one thing. Becca was a vivacious woman who did for herself. But Claire going missing was a whole different matter. Claire hated dirt, bugs, rain, the outdoors in general, so there was no reason for her to go anywhere on a day like this. Moreover, Claire would have never walked outside in her carefully coordinated outfit, not without a car. Where could she have gone? Janae whipped out her cell phone and called Claire. No answer. She texted her, "Call me." Still no answer. What was going on? Claire never missed a text. She would answer them even in class. She didn't care. Why wasn't she answering? "Where are you?" Janae texted in increasing agitation. She waited for several long seconds for a response. There was none. Definitely starting to panic now, Janae ran back out to the car. Driving through all the campsites, she saw no one. No kids playing in the puddles, no families grilling underneath rainflies, no smokers sitting by their RVs. Nothing. She pressed the speed dial on her phone, Dad's cell. Janae was starting to feel frightened. The absence of people was creepy. She deeply felt that she wanted to hear a human voice more than anything right now. The phone rang 5 times before going to voicemail. She tried calling her mom. No response. She tried calling her sister, Cantrell. No response. She called her therapist, her anxiety mounting into fever pitch. No response. She was completely alone. Completely alone. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed that episode, go ahead and hit that like button. And for more of these Storytime episodes, you can follow us both here and on the Creant World Reddit at r/CreantWorld using the flare Storytime to submit your own stories if you'd like us to read them. Until next time, I'll see you later.